Okay, we are going to start with just talking a little bit about section 1.1, which you've already read, and we're just going to look a little bit about a review of lines. So 1.1 is technically the slope of a straight line. I just want to do a couple examples. You can read, I'm sure, so I'm not going to actually do an entire lecture on 1.1, but I just want to kind of do a couple examples that are in the books just so you feel comfortable with doing lines. Lines are going to be very important for us when we use them in calculus. So in this section, we look at the two forms, and I won't spend a lot of time going into these. These should be pretty familiar. You know, I can understand if you don't really remember them completely from 1400 or from college algebra, whatever you've had. But there are two forms of lines, and those two forms which we look at is the slope-intercept. So again, I'm not going to go too much into these. Y equals mx plus b. And then the other one that you should have seen, I think this was like slope property 2 or something in your book. This is called point slope. So I'm going to do two examples for you using these two forms for a line. Now remember on these, whoops, that should be a minus. Let's redo that and do that really quick. X minus x1. Okay, so I'm going to look at slope-intercept and point slope form, and remember what your m always stands for in each of these forms. That m is your slope, and a couple ways we can think of slope. Well, if we wanted to, we could do y2 minus y1. Don't worry about the subscripts 2 and 1. That's just saying, you take the change in y, just subtract your y coordinates over the change in x. And you can look at their examples of how to find slope in the book. But let's look at a couple examples of how to use this form and how to use this form here. All right. So the first example I want to do is just talking about how to graph this. Whoops. Okay, so for example, let's graph the line. Let's do y equals 2/3 x minus 3. Okay, so I want to graph this line 2/3 x minus 3. If you notice, this line is in slope-intercept form. Okay, how do I know it's in slope-intercept form? Because the y is by itself. This number right here, that's my m, and then I have my x, of course, and then I have my plus b. Now I know that doesn't look like plus, but we could think of this as plus a negative 3. So remember what that slope-intercept form gives you if you have it in slope-intercept form. This number right here is going to be my slope, and then this number along with a 0 is going to be my y-intercept. So I can use that information then to graph my line. So what do I know? I know then that my slope is 2/3 and my y-intercept is going to be the point. Remember, the y-intercept is an actual point, 0, negative 3. And as long as I have that information, I can graph my line. So let me try and do this. And try and draw a straight line. I do not draw straight lines well, so I'm glad I have this handy program to help me draw these. Okay, so I'm just going to get my xy coordinate axis, and let's put some tick marks in there. So, whoops, maybe here, here. You can put these in your notes pretty easily. It doesn't have to be perfect on a test or something. If I were to have you graph a line, I would, of course, provide you with graphing paper. So on these short videos, it won't be perfect, but I want it to give you kind of the sense of what's going on. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to graph this point 0, negative 3. So remember that says 0 in the x direction and down 3 in the y direction. So I'm going to go ahead and graph that point. And then what does this m here tell me to do? That tells me to go up 2. Remember, that's the change in y over the change in x, so to the right 3. So I'm going to go up 2. I'm not going to put a point there, and I'm going to go to the right 3. Now, because my coordinate system isn't super great. I'm not going to have a perfect line here, but I'll do one more point here, go up to, well, maybe a couple more points. Go over 3, maybe it'd be right there. Or again, I could think of this as a -2 divided by a -3. That's the same thing as a +2 over +3. So I could think of going down 2 and to the left 3. And sure enough, we'll make those points nice and big. It looks like I am going to get a straight line here. Oh, that didn't work. Sorry about that. Let me try that one more time. Oh, it didn't work, but you got the idea. I didn't get the perfect line there for you. Oh, you need to pretend that's a line. This course, if anything, will be a lesson in imagination when you look at my drawings. But that's my line right there. And if you notice, it has that slope 2/3 and it has that point, that y-intercept 0, -3. Okay, just want to do one more example for you, and then I am going to let you be. So let's take that off. Sorry about that. Let's do layer 3 here. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to do an example for you using point slope form. So let's, whoops. Okay, so let's do an example here. And what I want to do here is I want to find, there's an I in there, the equation, whoops, of a line passing through the points, let's do 2, -3, and I don't know, 1, let's say -5. Okay? All right, so I need to find the equation of a line passing through the points 2, -3, and 1, -5. If you notice, neither one of these is a y-intercept, so I need to use point slope form. So remember, point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where the x1 and the y1 is any point that the line goes through, and m, of course, is your slope. So I know I need m, so let's start off by finding m. So I'm going to take the change in my y values. Doesn't matter which one you pick first, I'll just take -3 first. So -3 minus a -5, all divided by, now because I chose -3 first, I must choose its friend x value first. So I'm going to have 2, oh, this worked out pretty nicely, and I didn't even mean it to, -1. So what do we get here? Well, that obviously becomes a plus. -3 plus 5 is 2, all over 1. 2 divided by 1 is also known as 2. So now we're ready to go. So I just need to write out the equation of my line. I'm going to come back and I'm going to use this formula, right, or this form right here to do this, and I'm just going to plug in the point that I know I need, or the point of a point that goes through the line, that's all, and then my slope. So I'm going to do y minus, doesn't matter which point you use, maybe -3 made you mad that day and you don't like -3, so you decide to use -5. Does not matter, you can use any point on the line, that's the beauty of this form. All times 2 x minus, now I am forced to use the corresponding x value that went with that -5. So if you notice, this -5 right here corresponded to the y1, and this -1 corresponded to the x1. And really, you know, I can just go ahead and simplify this a little bit. You don't really have to, but maybe to make it look nice, my last thing would be y plus 5 equals 2 times x minus 1, and you are welcome to leave it in that form. If you can't sleep at night with it in that form, you can take the 2 through right here and then move the 5 over. And those are examples for lines. Please email me or call me and let me know if you have any questions.